I never thought a simple dinner out would turn into a life-changing moment, but that's exactly what happened. It was a Saturday night, and I had just wrapped up a hectic week at work. I was exhausted, but I knew I needed to unwind. So, I decided to treat myself to something special. Dinner at one of the fancier spots in town, a place called La Belle Vie in downtown LA. You know, the kind of place where the prices are high enough to make you check your bank account twice before booking a reservation. I had heard so much about it from friends, but I'd never been. Tonight seemed like the perfect night to indulge a little, especially since I'd just gotten a promotion. It was my little celebration. I walked in, feeling like a queen. The place was exactly what I had imagined. Dim lighting, crisp white, tablecloths, and waiters in tuxedos gliding around. It was the kind of place where everyone seemed to know everyone. I felt a little out of place, but hey, I deserved this, right? As I was shown to my table, I tried to ignore the glances I was getting. Maybe it was all in my head, but I could feel the judgment in the air. The restaurant was full of well-dressed people, and then there was me. Jeans, a basic blouse, and heels that had clearly seen better days. I wasn't dressed to the nines like the other diners, but I didn't let that stop me. After all, I had worked hard to get to this point, right? I sat down, ordered a drink, and began scanning the menu. The prices were astronomical, a side of truffle. Fries cost more than my rent back in my college days, but I was here to treat myself, so I decided to go all in. I was getting the filet mignon, the most expensive thing on the menu. I was here to live a little, you know? The waiter came over and introduced himself with a friendly smile, but I noticed a subtle shift in his demeanor as I gave him my order. There was something about the way he looked at me, like he was sizing me up. I brushed it off. Maybe I was just overthinking it. The food arrived, and it was honestly incredible. The steak was cooked to perfection, and I felt like I could actually hear my taste buds dancing with joy. It was the kind of meal that made me forget about everything else, my worries, the stress of the week, the bills piling up at home. But then, something happened. Something I wasn't prepared for. As I was finishing up, a group of people walked in. They were loud and dressed in designer everything. They took a seat at the table next to me. I could tell by their tone and the way they carried themselves that they were regulars at places like this. It didn't take long before I overheard them talking about a big deal they were closing, something about a merger. They seemed to have everything, while I felt like I was just playing catch-up. I tried to ignore it, but one of the women, well, she wasn't even trying to hide it, stared at me with a look that said it all. She looked me up and down, made a face, and then turned to her friends to whisper. I was sure they were talking about me. My heart dropped. Was I out of place here? Was I too casual for a place like this? I could feel my cheeks burning, but I decided to just focus on my meal. I told myself, forget them, you belong here just as much as they do. But that didn't stop the uncomfortable feeling in my stomach. I didn't finish my meal. I felt self-conscious and awkward, so I asked for the check and quickly paid, avoiding eye contact with the table next to me. As I got up to leave, I heard the woman behind me mutter something I couldn't quite catch. All I could hear was the sting of the word poor. I froze. It wasn't directed at me, I told myself. Maybe it was just a coincidence. But it stung nonetheless. I walked to the door, my head down, trying to shake off the embarrassment. And that's when it happened. The waiter, who had been serving me all night, suddenly appeared in front of me. His posture straightened, and his eyes softened. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said with a warm smile. "I just wanted to let you know that we're all so happy to see you back." I blinked. "I'm sorry. I'm not sure what you mean." He chuckled lightly. "No need to be modest. You're the owner of this place, aren't you?" My jaw dropped. "What? No, I'm not," I stuttered, completely thrown off. The waiter smiled even wider. Oh, you must have forgotten. You've been here before, right? Last week, in fact, you said you wanted to come back tonight to treat yourself after a long week. Welcome back, owner. I was speechless. Owner? I whispered, almost to myself. He nodded, his eyes glimmering with a hint of mischief. That's right. We've been expecting you. I stood there, frozen, staring at the waiter. I had no idea what he was talking about. Me? An owner? No way. I wasn't some rich entrepreneur. I was just a regular woman who worked a 9-to-5 job and barely managed to keep my bills paid. There had to be some kind of mistake. I looked around the restaurant, hoping someone would come to my rescue and explain that this was all a misunderstanding, but no one seemed to care. The bustling crowd around me continued their conversations, laughter echoing off the walls, completely oblivious to my confusion. Ma'am, the waiter's voice broke through my thoughts. Are you all right? I shook my head, trying to make sense of it all. I think there's been a mix-up, I said, my voice trembling. I'm not an owner here. I'm just a regular customer. The waiter raised an eyebrow, his expression suddenly serious. I understand this might be a lot to process, but you are the owner. You own this entire place. I took a step back, my heart racing. This was insane. Was I being pranked? My mind started racing as I tried to piece together any possible explanation. Maybe I had been part of some crazy reality show without knowing it. Maybe someone had put my name down as an owner for some bizarre reason. But nothing about this situation made sense. No, I said, shaking my head again, my voice growing more frantic. I swear, I'm just a regular person. I can't own a place like this. How could I? The waiter seemed to take pity on me. He stepped a little closer, lowering his voice. You really don't remember, do you? His tone was gentle but full of something deeper, something that felt oddly comforting. Maybe this will jog your memory. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. He handed it to me, and my hands trembled as I unfolded it. It was a letter, and the first thing that caught my eye was the logo at the top. La Belle Vie. Below it, in elegant script, was my name. My full name. I skimmed through the letter quickly, my eyes growing wider with each word. It was an official document, an ownership contract for the restaurant. The letter outlined the deal, the terms, and the investment I had made. I had somehow, without realizing it, purchased La Belle Vie. I was a co-owner of the place. I blinked. No, this couldn't be real. This was some sort of joke. My palms were clammy as I handed the letter back to the waiter. This can't be right, I stammered, feeling lightheaded. I don't remember any of this. I didn't buy a restaurant. How could I? The waiter, whose name tag now caught my eye, Henry, smiled, but it wasn't the usual customer service smile. There was something knowing about it. Something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Ma'am, he said gently, I can understand your confusion. It's a lot to take in. But trust me, you signed the paperwork. You were fully aware when it happened. The words felt like a slap in the face, and for a moment, I felt dizzy. I couldn't breathe. How could this happen? How could I have not remembered any of it? I tried to think back. Had I blacked out? Had I been coerced into signing something? But everything was a blur. I don't understand, I muttered, my voice barely audible. How could I forget something like this? I don't even have the money to buy a place like this. How? Henry nodded, his gaze softening. I know it's hard to believe, but your financial situation was different a few months ago. You had access to funds that you didn't know about, and you made some decisions that, at the time, seemed impossible. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. This doesn't make sense. If I'm an owner, why didn't I know? Why didn't anyone tell me? Henry took a deep breath. There's something you don't remember about the deal. The contract wasn't just about money. It was about you taking a chance, investing in yourself. You have a lot more power. A lot more influence than you've realized. The reason it hasn't clicked yet is because we wanted you to remember it in your own time. The decision was yours, and the restaurant was just the beginning. His words were like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't quite fit together. The more he said, the more I realized how little I truly understood about my own life. You need time, he continued. But this is yours. La Belle Vie is just one part of the plan. I stared at him, my mind racing. What did he mean by plan? Was this some kind of conspiracy? I felt like I was in a dream, and none of it was real. Just as I was about to speak, Henry turned and gestured toward the door. Don't worry. We'll explain everything in due time. But for now, if you want, you can take a seat at your table. The night is still young, and everything you've ever wanted is right here in front of you. I didn't know what to do. My mind was spinning, but something inside me told me that I needed to take a seat, to digest all of this. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to this story than I realized. I stood there for a moment, frozen in place, staring at Henry. It felt like the world around me was shifting. Everything seemed so surreal. But his words echoed in my head. Everything you've ever wanted is right here in front of you. I didn't know if I was ready to dive into this mystery, but I also knew there was no way out. Something had changed inside me, something I couldn't ignore. I had to sit down. I had to know what was going on. I took a shaky breath, trying to calm my nerves, and walked back to my table. The other diners barely seemed to notice my internal chaos. Their laughter and conversations filled the air as if nothing had happened, as if everything was normal. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was at the center of something huge. When I sat down, my eyes scanned the menu again, even though I had no appetite left. The waiter had already cleared my half-eaten plate, but my thoughts were miles away. I needed answers, fast. I waved to a nearby waiter and asked for a glass of water. My hands were still trembling. I kept thinking back to what Henry had said about not remembering and how I had access to funds I didn't know about. I had so many questions, but no answers. I was supposed to be celebrating a promotion, something small that had taken months of hard work. Now I was learning that I owned a part of a high-end restaurant, one of the most famous in LA. How? Why? Here you go, a voice said, interrupting my thoughts. The waiter set down a glass of water in front of me, and I thanked him with a distracted smile. He walked away, and I took a sip of water to steady my nerves. I needed to think this through. As I sat there, trying to collect my thoughts, I glanced over at the table where the group of well-dressed people had been sitting. The woman who had made the comment earlier, calling me poor, was still there, but now I noticed something I hadn't before. She was watching me. No, not just watching, she was staring, and not in the way someone glances at a stranger. They were watching me like they knew who I was, like they were trying to figure me out. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready for any of it. I had come to enjoy a simple dinner and ended up uncovering some strange, mysterious part of my life that I didn't understand. The waiter had said that I would remember things in time, but time wasn't something I felt like I had right now. Every second felt like it brought me closer to unraveling a life I didn't know existed. "Excuse me, ma'am?" I looked up, startled. It was Henry again. This time, though, there was no smiling. His eyes were serious. "We need to talk," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "It's time." I didn't hesitate. "Talk about what?" I asked, my voice strained. He motioned to the back of the restaurant. "There's a private room we can use. You'll get the full picture, I promise." I looked at him for a second, trying to gauge whether or not I could trust him. Part of me wanted to run, but another part of me felt like I couldn't leave without answers. Slowly, I nodded. "Lead the way." Henry walked ahead of me, his footsteps quiet on the polished floors. I followed him through a narrow hallway, the soft glow of pendant lights casting shadows on the walls. We finally stopped at a small, unmarked door. Henry knocked twice before opening it. Inside, the room was dimly lit, with a large oak table in the center, surrounded by chairs. There was a small stack of folders on the table. I stepped inside and took a seat, my heart hammering in my chest. Henry closed the door behind him and sat across from me, his face still serious but not unkind. "Let's start at the beginning," he said. "I know this is all overwhelming, but you need to understand the bigger picture." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "Okay," I said, my voice shaky. "I'm listening." He nodded and opened one of the folders. "This," he began, "is the contract for the restaurant, the one you signed several months ago. It was part of a business opportunity that was presented to you by a third party. You didn't realize it at the time, but the investment came from a trust fund, one that was set up for you long ago. You didn't know about it because you never had access to the account. The trust was designed for your future, your business future." I stared at him, confused. "A trust fund? Are you saying someone left me money?" Henry nodded. "Yes. The person who set it up wanted to ensure that you'd have the opportunity to grow your wealth. La Belle Vie is just the beginning. You've been given the chance to make decisions that most people only dream of. This was too much to process." "So, you're saying someone secretly set this up for me?" I asked, still trying to make sense of it all. "And I signed something without knowing? How does that even happen?" Henry leaned forward, his eyes intense. "The trust fund was designed to help you gain access to opportunities that would have been too risky for you otherwise. The money was never meant to be spent until you were ready. But you made a decision to invest in La Belle Vie. That was your choice. We knew you'd be hesitant, so we made sure you didn't fully realize what you were doing until the time was right." I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. "This is insane," I whispered. "I can't believe this is real." Henry's gaze softened. "I understand, but it is real, and it's time to take the next step." I sat there, my head spinning, trying to process everything Henry had just told me. I wanted to scream, to demand answers to all the questions flooding my mind. How could I not remember this? How could I have signed away control of my life without realizing it? I felt like I had somehow fallen into a trap that I couldn't escape. But Henry was here, sitting across from me, calm and collected, as if this whole thing was as normal as ordering a cup of coffee. "So what now?" I finally managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "What do I do with all of this? With La Belle Vie? How am I supposed to run a restaurant when I don't even remember owning it in the first place?" Henry seemed to consider my question for a moment before answering. "This isn't just about La Belle Vie. It's about you, about your potential. This restaurant is one piece of a much larger puzzle. We've been waiting for you to realize your place in all of this. It's not just about ownership. It's about leadership." My mind was racing, but I forced myself to focus on his words. "Leadership? What are you talking about?" Henry leaned forward slightly. "You've always had the potential to be more than you ever realized. This restaurant, this business, it's only the beginning. You've been given an opportunity to take control, to create something that could change the entire city. And I know you're ready for it, even if you don't believe it right now." I shook my head. "I don't understand. How can I be ready for something like this? I'm just a regular woman, Henry. I don't have any experience with this kind of thing. I'm not cut out for it. Henry's eyes softened, but his expression remained serious. That's the thing, though. You are cut out for it. You don't need years of experience or some fancy business degree. You have something more important. Vision. You have the ability to see things that others can't. You've always had that. And this restaurant, this business, is your chance to put that vision into action. I felt like I was drowning in his words. I wanted to believe him, I really did. But it was all just too much. My mind kept circling back to the same question. Why me? I opened my mouth to ask, but Henry seemed to read my thoughts. The trust was set up for you because someone believed in you. Someone who knew you had the ability to change things, to make a difference. That person knew you would have a hard time believing it at first, so they made sure the pieces came together slowly. They trusted you to figure it out when the time was right. I couldn't take it anymore. Who was it? Who set this up? Who trusted me? Henry hesitated for just a moment before replying. That, unfortunately, is not something I can reveal just yet. But I can tell you this. The person who set all of this up saw something in you. They believed in you more than you believed in yourself. And now it's your time to rise to the occasion. I felt a lump form in my throat. My emotions were all over the place. Confusion, fear, excitement, and even a little bit of anger. I had been given something I didn't ask for, something I didn't understand, and now I was expected to just take the reins and lead. It didn't seem fair. But at the same time, a part of me felt a strange sense of purpose, something I couldn't quite explain. What's the next step? I asked, my voice low but determined. What do I need to do? Henry smiled, and this time it wasn't just an ordinary smile. It was one of approval. The first step is simple. You take ownership, not just of La Belle Vie, but of everything. You have the power to make decisions, to create change. You have a vision that no one else can replicate. The world is waiting for you to step up. I wanted to argue, to tell him that I wasn't ready, but something inside me told me that it was pointless. I didn't have the luxury of indecision anymore. Whatever this was, I had to embrace it. The opportunity was right in front of me, and if I didn't take it, I might never get another chance. What do I need to do right now? I asked again, this time with more conviction. Henry pushed the stack of folders across the table toward me. You need to read this. These documents are the blueprint for your future. They outline your rights, your responsibilities, and the vision that was set for you. This isn't just about the restaurant. It's about everything that comes after, your legacy, your impact. I stared down at the folders, my mind still reeling. I hadn't planned for any of this, but it seemed like the universe had other plans. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing on me. There was no going back. I can't do this alone, I muttered, almost to myself. I need help. Henry nodded, as if he had been expecting this. You won't be alone. You'll have a team, people who will support you every step of the way. But at the end of the day, the decisions are yours. You will lead, and you will shape the future. For a moment, there was silence between us. I could feel the gravity of his words settling in. It was terrifying. But I knew deep down that this was the opportunity I had been waiting for, whether I was ready for it or not. I took a deep breath and reached for the folder. I took a long, steadying breath as I stared down at the folder in front of me. My fingers hovered over the edge of the pages, unsure if I was ready to dive deeper into the unknown. Every instinct in me screamed to run, to leave this mess behind, and return to the comfort of my normal life. But I knew, deep down, that my normal life was slipping away. This was bigger than anything I could have ever imagined. I had no choice but to face it. I opened the folder slowly. the pages feeling heavier with each turn. The first few were filled with legal jargon, terms I didn't understand, but one page caught my eye. A detailed blueprint of the restaurant, La Belle Vie. It outlined every aspect of the business: the floor plan, the staff, the marketing strategy, and most notably, the vision. The vision for the future. As I flipped through, my heart raced. There were numbers, projections, even plans for expansions in other cities. But none of it made sense. How could I, someone who had never even thought about running a business, be at the center of something this big? "Henry," I said, my voice shaking, "this is all too much. I don't know how to do this. I've never managed anything like this before. What if I mess it up?" Henry didn't flinch. He was calm, patient, like he had seen this all before. "You won't mess it up. You just have to trust yourself. Remember, you didn't get here by accident. You have what it takes, whether you believe it right now or not." I looked at the pages in front of me, feeling the weight of the responsibility settling deeper into my chest. The vision for La Belle Vie was huge, bigger than anything I could have imagined. It wasn't just about running a restaurant. It was about creating a brand, an empire, something that could reshape the food industry in ways no one expected. And somehow, it all depended on me. "Start small," Henry said, as if reading my mind. "Take it one step at a time. You don't have to have all the answers now, but you have to take that first step." I took another deep breath, trying to steady my thoughts. "I guess I could start by talking to the staff. I can't do this alone, right?" Henry nodded. "Exactly. You'll need the right people around. You. It's all about the team. But you also need to be decisive. The vision you have for La Belle Vie has to come from you. People will follow your lead, but you have to lead with confidence." I thought back to the woman who had mocked me earlier, the one who had called me poor. What if she was right? What if I didn't belong here? What if I failed and everyone saw me for the fraud I felt I was? But I pushed those thoughts aside. I couldn't afford to doubt myself. I had to at least try. "All right," I said, setting the folder down on the table with more determination than I felt. "What do I need to do next?" Henry smiled. "Next, you need to meet with the team. Get to know your staff, your managers. Get a sense of where the business is at and where you want it to go. It's time to make your presence known. You can't just sit back and let it run itself. You have to take control." I stood up, suddenly feeling a surge of nervous energy. This was happening. Whether I was ready or not, the responsibility had fallen into my lap, and there was no way out. It was time to face the world, to step up, and prove that I could handle it. As I walked toward the door, Henry stood up as well. "Remember," he called after me, "this is your journey. Don't let anyone else's doubts or expectations get in your way." I nodded, trying to take in his words. I wasn't sure how I felt about it all yet, but there was one thing I knew for sure. I couldn't go back to the way things were. La Belle Vie was mine now, and I had to figure out what that meant. I stepped into the bustling dining room, my heart pounding. The noise around me felt deafening, but I pushed forward, my mind focused on the task ahead. It was time to meet the team, the people who had been running this place all along. I needed to understand who they were and how I could lead them to something greater. As I made my way toward the back of the restaurant, I was met with curious glances from the staff. They didn't know me, and I didn't know them. But that was about to change. I was about to take control, whether I felt ready or not. When I reached the back office, I knocked on the door, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. The team was gathered around a large conference table. They looked up as I entered, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. It was clear they weren't used to someone like me walking in, someone who seemed out of place, but they didn't know who I was. They didn't know what I was about to do. I cleared my throat and stood tall. "Hello, everyone," I said, trying to steady my voice. "My name is Your Name, and I am your new co-owner. I know this is a lot to take in, but we're going to do great things together. I'm excited to meet all of you, and I'm ready to take this place to the next level." There was a long pause. I could see the skepticism in their eyes, but also something else, curiosity. Maybe, just maybe, they were waiting for me to prove myself. I wasn't sure how, but I was going to show them that I belonged here. I was going to prove to them, and to myself, that I could do this. Let's get to work. The room was quiet after I finished speaking. The team, all of them experienced professionals, sat there, sizing me up. I could feel the weight of their eyes on me, as if they were trying to figure out if I was really the person who was going to lead this place forward. I had never felt so exposed in my life. But I knew one thing. If I didn't step up now, I'd lose their respect before I even had a chance to earn it. After what felt like an eternity, the silence was broken by one of the chefs, a tall guy with tattoos covering both arms and a serious look on his face. He was the first to speak. "So, what now?" he asked, leaning back in his chair and crossing his arms. "We've been running things just fine. Why should we listen to you?" I could feel my heart rate spike. Was this how they all felt? Were they all going to be this confrontational? I didn't have the luxury of retreating into uncertainty, so I took a deep breath and decided to be honest. "I know you've been doing great work here," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But La Belle Vie isn't just about serving food. It's about creating an experience. I'm here because I believe in this place. I'm not here to change everything overnight. But I want to build something bigger. I want us to be more than just a restaurant. I want us to be a brand, a symbol of excellence that people seek out, not just for the food, but for the entire experience we create. And to do that, I need your help." The room seemed to settle a little, the tension easing just a fraction. The chef didn't say anything, but he nodded slightly, as if my words had registered. That was a good sign. One of the waiters, a woman, with a bright smile and a no-nonsense attitude, spoke next. "We've been through a lot in the last few years. You think you can just come in here and change things up?" I understood her frustration. She was right to be skeptical. It had been a tough few years, especially with the pandemic affecting the restaurant industry. But this wasn't just about the past. It was about the future. "I'm not here to come in and change things for the sake of it," I said, locking eyes with her. "I'm here to listen, to understand where we're at, and figure out where we can go from here. I'm not trying to undermine anyone. What I'm asking for is your trust. If we work together, we can make this place better than it's ever been." Another long silence hung in the air. I could feel the tension, but I could also feel something else. The beginning of a shift. I wasn't just a stranger who'd walked in off the street. I was the owner, the one with the power to make decisions. But more importantly, I was the one who had to make them feel like they had a say in the future too. Finally, the manager of the restaurant, a woman in her late 30s with short blonde hair, leaned forward in her chair and looked at me. "You're going to have to do more than just talk," she said. "We need action. We've been barely scraping by for months. If you want us to believe in you, you've got to show us that you've got what it takes." Her words stung, but they were fair. This wasn't a time for empty promises. I needed to show them that I could deliver. I had to prove to them that I wasn't just some inexperienced outsider who had stumbled into this position. "I get it," I said, my voice firmer now. "Action speaks louder than words. That's why I'm going to take the next week to meet with each of you, individually. I want to hear your ideas, your concerns, and your vision for the future of this restaurant. I don't expect anyone to just fall in line. but I do expect us to work together to build something better." There was a murmur around the table. The manager gave me a small nod, and I could see that the others were slowly starting to warm up to the idea. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to happen overnight. But I was starting to believe that it was possible. I stood up and looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. I'm here because I believe in this place. And I believe in all of you. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but I know we can do it if we all pull together. The chef, the first to speak up, let out a low whistle. "All right," he said, a hint of a grin tugging at his lips. "You've got my attention. I'll work with you." The waitress nodded too. "Let's see what you've got. I'm all in. For now." I felt a rush of relief wash over me, though I knew this was only the beginning. I had earned a little trust, but I still had a long way to go. As I walked out of the room, I felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. It wasn't going to be easy, but I had done the first thing I needed to do. I had taken control. I had shown them that I wasn't going to back down. And now, it was time to prove that I could do what I'd promised. To build something great, something worth believing in. For the first time since I'd stepped into the restaurant that night, I felt like I could do this. Maybe I didn't have all the answers yet, but I had the drive, the vision, and the team I needed to make it happen. And that was enough for now. The next few days were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and trying to get my feet under me. I had made the first step, standing in front of the team and giving them my vision. But that was only the beginning. Now came the real work. Now came the grind. I started by meeting with the staff individually, just as I'd promised. The manager, Sarah, was the first to sit down with me. She had a sharp mind and even sharper opinions, which I appreciated. She didn't mince words. "So," she said as we sat down in her office, "what exactly is your plan? You come in here, talking about a new vision, but let's be real. We've been struggling for a while. What are you going to do that's different?" I liked her straightforwardness, but I could tell she was still skeptical, maybe more than a little frustrated. This was a person who had worked through the ups and downs of running a restaurant, and she had every right to be wary of someone like me coming in with grand ideas. "I don't have all the answers yet," I admitted. "But I know we can't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. I want us to look at everything: the menu, the customer experience, our marketing. We need to make this place stand out again, not just for the food, but for what we offer. I'm not talking about some flashy changes for the sake of it. I want us to be known as a place where people don't just come to eat, they come to have an experience. And that has to start with us." Sarah didn't say anything for a moment, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. Then she leaned forward slightly. "Okay, I can get on board with that, but you'll need to back it up with more than just words. We're already stretched, thin, and I don't know if we can afford any drastic changes right now." I nodded. "I understand. We're not going to do everything at once. It'll take time. I'm just asking for a commitment from everyone to be part of the solution." Sarah studied me for a moment longer before nodding. "All right, let's see where this goes. But if you want me on your side, you'll have to show me you can walk the walk, not just talk the talk." I left her office feeling a little more confident. At least I hadn't lost her. And while I knew there would be more resistance ahead, I also knew that I wasn't going to back down. I couldn't afford to. The next meeting was with the chef, Greg. He was a legend in the kitchen, a perfectionist, and from what I could tell, he was also fiercely protective of La Belle Vie. I had no idea what to expect when I walked into the kitchen that day. "Greg," I began, trying to get straight to the point. "I know you've been here a long time and I respect that. But I need to ask, are you on board with this vision of mine, or do you think it's not worth the effort?" Greg paused what he was doing and wiped his hands on his apron. He turned toward me with a stern expression. "What makes you think You can come in here and change things up." His tone wasn't angry, just intense. I didn't flinch. Because I believe in what we're doing here. But I think we've lost touch with what made us special. People come to La Belle Vie not just for great food. They come because it's a place where they feel something. Right now, I don't think we're giving them that. Greg studied me for a long time, then looked around the kitchen. "Look, I'm not in this for gimmicks. I've worked my ass off to make this kitchen what it is. But if you're talking about stepping it up, about giving people something they can't get anywhere else, then I'm willing to listen." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "That's all I'm asking. Let's work together to take it to the next level. You bring the food, I'll bring the vision." Greg grunted in approval. "All right, let's see what you got. But if we're going to do this, I expect it to be real. No half-assed changes." I couldn't help but smile. Real is all I'm about. With those two key people on board, I felt like I could finally begin to build momentum. But it wasn't going to be easy. I spent the next few days meeting with the rest of the team, from the servers to the bartenders, making sure everyone had a say. It wasn't enough to just tell them what I wanted. We all needed to be on the same page. In the evenings, I pored over financial statements, marketing reports, and customer feedback, looking for patterns and weaknesses that we could address. I was determined to do my homework. If I was going to make this work, I had to understand the business from every angle. A week into this whirlwind of meetings and planning, I met with a marketing consultant, a woman named Lisa, who had a reputation for turning around struggling brands. She walked into the restaurant like she owned the place, exuding confidence in a way that I was starting to envy. I needed a bit of that. "So, what's your plan?" she asked after we exchanged pleasantries. "What's the angle here? Why should people care about La Belle Vie?" I leaned back in my chair, thinking for a moment. It's about more than just the food. It's about an experience. People come to eat here because they want more than just a meal. They want something memorable. I want to remind them why this place was so special in the first place, and build on that. I need you to help me rebrand it, but without losing what's made it unique. Lisa raised an eyebrow. "So, you're not talking about a full-on makeover. You want to go deeper, change the feel of the place without changing the essence." "Exactly," I said, feeling a spark of excitement. "It's all about authenticity. People are looking for real, and I think we can offer that. But we've got to show them we're not just another high-end restaurant." Lisa smiled, clearly impressed by my clarity. "All right, I like what I'm hearing. Let's do this, as by." I walked back through the restaurant later that evening. I felt a sense of purpose growing inside me. I had taken the first steps, real steps, and I could see the pieces starting to fall into place. It wasn't going to be perfect, but it was going to be mine. And maybe, just maybe, this vision I had would become something bigger than all of us. The weeks flew by faster than I could keep up with, and the restaurant slowly began to transform. Not in dramatic, showy ways, but in subtle shifts that were slowly taking root. I was learning that change didn't always have to be explosive. It could be gradual, like the soft pull of the tide. Small improvements here and there began to add up, and as the days passed, I saw something shifting in the staff too. They were starting to believe in the vision, starting to believe in La Belle Vie again. The staff meetings had become less about telling them what needed to change and more about brainstorming together, sharing ideas, discussing problems, coming up with creative solutions. I was learning to listen as much as I spoke, letting their input shape the direction we were headed in. It was a team effort, and I finally felt like the team was starting to gel. One afternoon, after a particularly successful dinner service, I sat down with Sarah and Greg in the office to go over the numbers. We had seen a slight increase in business already, but it wasn't enough to declare victory. We had to keep pushing. "So we're up by 12% in reservations," Sarah said, flipping through the reports. "It's a start, but we need more." Greg nodded, his eyes focused on the numbers. I've been thinking about the menu. We could do some tweaks. Add some seasonal items, maybe a few new cocktails. Get the regulars excited again. I looked at both of them, feeling that familiar buzz of excitement. This was it. We were starting to see results. It felt like the ship was slowly beginning to turn, and we were all steering it together. I love the idea of new cocktails, I said, but what about the experience? I want people to feel like they're walking into something different, even if they've been here a million times. Maybe it's time for a subtle refresh, new uniforms for the staff, maybe a fresh coat of paint. In the dining room? Let's make sure that when people walk in, they know they're stepping into something special. Sarah smiled. I see what you mean. A little refresh could go a long way. Greg grinned. All right. I can handle some new seasonal dishes and drinks, as long as it doesn't mess with my kitchen. I laughed, relieved to see them both on board. Deal. Let's start small and see where it takes us. If this place is going to thrive, we need to focus on every detail. The food, the service, the atmosphere. Everything needs to be perfect. The next week we got to work. The staff started to get a feel for the changes, and there was a palpable energy in the air. People were buzzing with excitement. Greg worked on a new menu, introducing dishes that played on the local, seasonal produce we had access to. Sarah got in touch with a designer to give the dining room a more contemporary, yet timeless feel. I handled the marketing side, working closely with Lisa to rebrand the restaurant while still holding on to the essence of what made La Belle Vie so beloved in the first place. I still remember the night of the first big launch of our new menu and the fresh atmosphere. I was nervous, as hell. What if it didn't work? What if we had missed the mark? What if the people who came to love La Belle Vie in the past didn't want something different? There was a part of me that feared we were changing it too much, too soon. But as the night wore on, my fears started to ease. The first guests arrived, and you could feel the shift in the room. There was a new energy, a sense of excitement that hadn't been there in months. The staff looked sharper, more confident, and the customers seemed to respond to it. People were talking about the new dishes, the new cocktails, the revamped atmosphere. I caught a glimpse of a group of guests taking photos in front of the newly painted wall, a subtle nod to the brand refresh we'd implemented. By the end of the night, we were fully booked again, something we hadn't been able to say in a long time. When the last guest left, I stayed behind to thank the team. You did great tonight, I said, looking around the bustling kitchen. I'm proud of all of you. We're on our way. Greg wiped his brow, a satisfied grin spreading across his face. You weren't so bad yourself. I'll admit, I was skeptical, but this new menu is going to get people talking. Sarah walked in from the front, arms crossed, but with a proud smile on her face. The reservations are looking solid for next week, too. We're definitely heading in the right direction. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I hadn't done this alone. We had all made this happen, together. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of us pulling in the same direction. But just as I was about to leave for the night, I noticed someone standing near the bar. A familiar face. It was the woman who had mocked me at the beginning of all this, the one who had called me poor. She was sitting there, sipping a glass of wine, her expression unreadable as she watched the restaurant around her. My heart skipped a beat. Was she here to criticize, or was she curious about what we had done? I walked over to her, trying to calm the nerves fluttering in my stomach. Enjoying the new changes? I asked, trying to sound casual. She looked up at me, her gaze hard for a moment, but then something shifted. Her lips curled into a faint smile. I have to admit, I wasn't sure about all the changes, but I was wrong. This place has a buzz again. You did it. I was surprised. You really think so? She nodded. Yeah, you're not what I expected. I'll give you credit. You turned it around. For the first time since I had walked into La Belle Vie, I felt a genuine sense of pride. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong anymore. It was about doing something I believed in and seeing it come to life. Thanks, I said, a smile tugging at my lips. I guess we're just getting started.